Great to welcome a man who has written a really fascinating book. It's about something that happened 50 years ago this month, the height of Vietnam and Cold Wars. We're going to find out all about it. It's called The Hunter Killers, the extraordinary story of the first wild weasels, the band of maverick aviators who flew the most dangerous missions of the Vietnam War. We're joined by New York Times bestseller Dan Hampton today on the telephone. Dan, good to talk with you. How are you?
Well, I'm fine, thanks, and I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, good to have a chance to chat with you for a few minutes. Had an opportunity to read through the book, and you yourself, I just want to mention, we're in the Air Force and we're a fighter pilot as well, so this comes from experience you've had, but this is kind of an interesting story. Very little is known about it, right? What happened 50 years ago?
Well, that's true, and I'm always amazed a lot of folks don't realize that, it's still going on. We still have wild weasels, and they still do essentially the same thing.
Yeah, this is the Vietnam War, as you mentioned, 1965, July of 1965, and apparently at the time, the Russians, who were our big enemy back then, one of their big enemies, had this surface-to-air missile that was causing some havoc, right? And this mission was put together to try and, destroy it, or at least alleviate it a bit, right?
That's true. 50 years ago tomorrow was when the first fighter jet was shot down by a surface-to-air missile. We call it a SAM. And in response to that, the Air Force put together a vengeance raid to go get them. Lyndon Johnson decided that he would give them a chance to surrender by televising the raid and announcing it in advance, so understandably the attack didn't go very well. And the Air Force and the Pentagon realized that they needed to form a special group of people to go out and specifically hunt and kill these surface-to-air missile sites.
How did they find the pilots to do it? How do you do that without giving too much away to find the guys that would do this?
Well, they didn't have to. Fighter pilots kind of have a screw loose anyway, so all they said was this is a very dangerous, top-secret mission. They wouldn't tell them where, but I mean, in 1965, where were you going to go, right? Except Southeast Asia. So they didn't have any problem finding volunteers, and they didn't have any problem getting the electronic warfare officers to come ride in the back and operate the equipment either. These guys were all very highly educated, very well trained, coming out of a relatively safe environment in bombers, and yet they wanted to go ride along in a fighter jet and get shot at. So really interesting group of guys.
Kind of similar in a sense, just reading some history and seeing film about it, the Doolittle Raiders, right after the bombing in Pearl Harbor, we sent a bunch of guys into Japan to similar kind of mission, right?
The same idea, which is, we can't tell you, but it's important. You probably won't come back, but we want you to do it, and we're not going to tell you what it is until you can't get out of it. So, yeah, standard military stuff. But there are enough people around that said, yeah, okay, we'll do it.
We'll talk a little bit about how you put it together. You had a chance to talk to some of these pilots that are still around, right?
Yeah, the pilots and the EROs both. But when I got into weaseling, it was all single seat. So it was all, the technology had advanced to the point where I could do it all. But in the original weasels, all the way through the F-4, you had to have an electronic warfare officer, a very talented, skilled guy to operate the equipment and help the pilot find the missile site. And so I got to talk to a lot of these guys, Stan Goldstein and Rich Morgan, and then some of the pilots. The guy that killed the first surface-to-air missile site, Alan Lamb, he was a great help with all this. So these are their stories.
You look at the technology we have today, cell phones and computers and all that, and you can kind of see how these weapons work. But back in 1965, was there anything even close to what we have today? How did it hone in on the planes and all that?
No. There wasn't anything close to it, which makes their story all the more remarkable because they didn't have anything close to what I had, but they still went ahead and did it.
Yeah.
And even today, with all the cosmic equipment we have, the essentials of it hasn't changed because as we get better equipment, so do the bad guys. So you end up having to do things, sort of a basic level still. And I was still flying over Baghdad trying to get people to shoot at me because I couldn't see them any other way. Even with all my space-based cosmic equipment, it still came down to my eyeballs in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it comes down to instinct when it happens, right? I mean,
a good way to put it. Yeah. Instinct.
Yeah. And you yourself a fighter pilot, and these men who did it back then, a special breed. You kind of mentioned it before. You may have a screw loose, but you got to have something else too. You got to have a lot of guts.
Well, in their case, especially because they didn't have the benefit of 25 years of people coming before them like I did. These guys were making it up as they went along, and that's the real tribute I wanted to
And you got great descriptions in the book of actual. You feel like you're in the plane with the pilots. I think that's what you tried to do. You did a great job of that. And you being a pilot, I guess, makes that a little bit easier to describe it. But you really get into some great detail.
Well, I try to do that. I did it with Lords of the Sky, the book before, because I think people really enjoy reading about aviation, and if they can feel like they're in the cockpit with the guy, then they get more out of it. So, yeah, I try to do that.
How much is the business of being a fighter pilot change? Obviously, the technology is different, but I guess the same skills are needed, right? The planes are much better equipped, but what's it like today compared to 50 years ago?
It's a lot less fun, I think, and that has nothing to do with the guys flying it. It has to do with the political environment in the Air Force. Not the Air Force, but the military. You know, they're I think the priorities are not right, and they're trying to make flying sort of a subset of the Air Force instead of the other way around. And I'm glad I'm out of it and free. I mean, I had a great time, and I loved flying fighters, but I'm happily a civilian and retired now.
Yeah, you did 20 years, right, in the Air Force? Yeah. 20 years. That's
20 years in one day.
Yeah, that's a remarkable. First of all, thanks for your service, but that's not easy to put in 20 years anywhere, so that's pretty good.
Well, you know, it was the only chance I was ever going to get to fly fighters, and you can't fly airplanes like that anywhere else but in the military. So I'm glad I did it, but I'm glad I'm past it too.
Well, what do you hope the people that read the book, obviously for entertainment, you want them to enjoy it that way, but any other message you want the people get to read this book?
I want them to this is a tribute, as I said, and I want them to appreciate, as maybe they didn't, the guys that came before. You know, these days everybody gets thanked and welcomed for their service, which is fine, and that's good, but I don't think a lot of these guys got welcomed home when they came back, any Vietnam veteran. So I hope that people will read a little bit about it. I put a lot of history in there of how we got into Vietnam and why we stayed, and I hope that some understanding will take root and people will appreciate what these guys did.
Yeah, I appreciated that you did that at the beginning of the book, because I didn't know a lot of it. I wasn't around at the beginning of it.
I didn't either.
As a kid, you heard about it, but how we got into it and why we got into it all seemed kind of a waste, didn't it?
Yeah, I didn't know either, and I was never taught in school, so I purposely put all that in there as background so people would understand it.
Yeah, well, it's a fascinating book. As we said, it takes you right into the cockpit of these brave men who flew these fighter pilot missions called the Hunter Killers. We're talking with Dan Hampton today. And Dan, the book just came out. Do you want to give out a website? People get a hold of you with the book?
You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Costco, any of those places. I have a website. There's also a Facebook page that HarperCollins put together for me, so you can get a hold of me any of those ways. And I always write back if people want to get a hold of me. So happy to hear from you.
Great. Thanks, Dan, for joining us, and hopefully we can do it again when the next book comes out.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
If you'd like to order the book we're talking about, please go to DougMilesMedia.com and enter the author's name in the Amazon search box. Thank you for listening. Please come back soon for more conversations here at DougMilesMedia.com. This has been a presentation of Doug Miles Media, all rights reserved. You can listen to or download previous programs at iTunes, Stitcher.com, or DougMilesMedia.